This is presented by HBS Connect, Japanese freight forwarder in Japan.
Hello, this is Iino. Today I will bring you the latest logistics news for December 2025. I will walk you through the major developments surrounding maritime shipping and logistics, including recent ocean freight rate trends, geopolitical risks, environmental regulations, and shifts in demand. Let's get started. Ocean freight rate trends across Asia, North America, and Europe. Currently, ocean freight rates are showing different movements across the major trade lanes linking Asia, Europe, and North America. Freight rates are highly sensitive and can fluctuate sharply even with small changes in the balance between supply and demand. To prevent a sudden collapse in the market, carriers deliberately cancel sailings, known as blank sailings, during weeks when cargo volumes are weak, thereby adjusting supply. This type of capacity management has now become a standard mechanism for supporting the market. Let's take a closer look at the situation by trade lane. First, the Europe-bound routes. On European routes, the decline in demand has been relatively moderate, and inventory adjustments have not progressed significantly. As a result, cargo volumes tend to remain stable, supply and demand are relatively well balanced, and freight rates have held firm without major deterioration. Carriers continue to manage capacity through blank sailings. Next, the North America-bound routes. The situation in North America is quite different. Due to aggressive inventory reductions by retailers, cargo volumes have been slow to recover, and weak demand persists. At the same time, the delivery of new-build vessels has added further capacity, creating an oversupply situation. As a result, freight rates continue to decline in a clearly different trend from Asia and Europe. Meanwhile, intra-Asia routes are maintaining an upward trend in rates, driven by seasonal peak demand combined with tight supply. Here, let's focus on the ultra-large vessels deployed on the demand-challenged North America routes. Vessels in the 16,000 to 24,000 TEU class are operating on North American routes, but it is not easy to simply redeploy surplus ships to Asia. Many Asian ports face limitations in water depth and berth capacity, making it difficult for large vessels to call. In addition, freight rate levels on Asia-bound routes are lower, making it structurally difficult to secure profitability. Looking ahead, for Asia-bound routes, cargo movements are expected to increase ahead of the Lunar New Year in China, which could further tighten space availability. For Europe-bound routes, the biggest issue is the status of transit through the Suez Canal. If full-scale reopening proceeds, effective capacity would increase sharply, raising the risk of renewed congestion at European ports. That said, a reopening would not necessarily lead to an immediate collapse in freight rates, and depending on circumstances, there remains the possibility of short-term upside. For North America-bound routes, the downward trend in freight rates is likely to continue, but carriers may implement additional blank sailings to further restrict supply. In addition, depending on political developments in the United States, changes in tariff policy could increase uncertainty in the market. In this way, the three major trade lanes, Asia, Europe, and North America, are shaped by a complex interplay of seasonal factors, port constraints, and political influences, each forming a different direction for freight rates. Uncertainty in the ocean freight market is expected to persist for some time, and shippers are increasingly required to plan shipments early while taking into account the characteristics of each trade lane. Suez Canal moves toward reopening. Next, an update on the Suez Canal. In November, the Canal Authority held discussions with more than 20 shipping companies and conducted online talks with Maersk, announcing a policy to carry out trial transits. This represents a major step toward reopening after a prolonged disruption to traffic. CMA-CGM has stated that there is no alternative to the canal and continues to deploy large vessels. Maersk, on the other hand, is taking a cautious stance, emphasizing safety as its top priority. Carriers have also called for incentive schemes and greater transparency around safety metrics, making safety assurance the key issue. That said, not all carriers are expected to return at once, and a phased resumption is anticipated. While reopening could improve transport efficiency, new risks such as congestion at European ports have also been pointed out. and future developments will be closely watched. IMO delays greenhouse gas reduction measures by 1 year. Next, the postponement of greenhouse gas reduction measures by the International Maritime Organization, IMO. The adoption of the midterm GHG reduction package, known as the Net Zero Framework, has been delayed by 1 year, with entry into force now scheduled for March 2027 and likely pushed back to 2028 at the earliest. The delay reflects divisions among countries. A proposal by Saudi Arabia to postpone the measures was supported by 57 countries, including the United States and China, while Europe opposed it. To avoid deepening divisions through a forced vote, the postponement proposal was adopted. As a result, uncertainty has increased around fuel emission intensity regulations and incentive schemes for zero-emission vessels, raising concerns that transition plans to new fuels and investments in new-built ships will be delayed. As the pace of maritime decarbonization slows, the question is how far companies can advance voluntary initiatives on their own. Container ships scrapping down 90% year-on-year. Next, the sharp decline in container ship scrapping. According to Clarksons, from January to September 2025, only 12 container ships, about 5,000 TEU, were scrapped, marking a historic low and a 90% decrease compared with the same period last year. The background lies in the strength of the charter market, where even aging vessels are more profitable to operate or resell rather than scrap. An active second-hand market, demand for smaller vessels, Red Sea-related diversions, and slow steaming are among multiple factors extending the life of older ships. However, if scrapping does not progress, there is a risk that future oversupply of tonnage could intensify downward pressure on freight rates. Short-term rational decisions may ultimately lead to longer-term challenges for market balance. U.S. retailers slash inventories to the limit. Next, the U.S. retail sector. Despite growing sales, retailers are sharply cutting imports, creating an unusual situation. According to Port Tracker, imports in November fell 14% year-on-year, with December expected to decline by 20%. There are also forecasts that volumes could drop to 1.79 million TEU by March 2026. With consumer sentiment cooling due to government shutdown risks and political uncertainty, retailers have reduced inventories to the bare minimum. Many have shifted to an ultra-light inventory model, holding only about 1 month's worth of stock, while the pullback also reflects a reaction to earlier front-loaded imports. In addition, as tariffs on Chinese products remain high, imports are increasingly shifting toward ASEAN countries, accelerating the reorganization of logistics networks. Ethanol fuel emerges as a promising next-generation option. Finally, next-generation marine fuels. Until now, methanol and ammonia have been at the center of attention, but ethanol has recently emerged as a new and promising candidate. Its large supply base, compatibility with carbon neutrality goals, and high compatibility with methanol have been highly valued, and concerns over methanol supply shortages have rapidly boosted interest. Engine manufacturers such as WinGD and Everlance are accelerating their efforts, with practical deployment expected from 2027 onward. Going forward, key focus areas will include new build ordering trends, policy frameworks, and the expansion of bioethanol supply, with the potential for the fuel market to undergo major restructuring between 2026 and 2028. How did you find today's news? The environment surrounding maritime shipping and logistics is entering a major transition phase, shaped by overlapping changes in geopolitics, regulation, demand, and fuel transformation. Alongside short-term market fluctuations, understanding medium to long-term structural changes will become increasingly important. That concludes today's update. Thank you very much for watching.
In this channel, I explain about international logistics knowledge for your better understanding. I hope this video will be a good support for your logistics job. If you have any shipment from Thailand or to Thailand, please feel free to contact me, Iino-san, anytime. Also, I'm very motivated to keep updating this video. If you subscribe, press good, or comment anything. Well, thank you. See you next time.